In this video, we are going to explore the pages of The Psychology of the Solar Plexus by Julia Seton. And you are in my book playlist. Welcome to Fortune Forecast. I am Daisy, your hostess. After reading the Master Key System by Charles F. Haanel, where he talked about the solar plexus, I was very intrigued. How is this relation of the solar plexus and the universal mind? We understand that the solar plexus is a complex system of radiating nerves and ganglia, and that it is found at the pit of the stomach in front of the aorta, making it also part of the sympathetic nervous system. I mean, we have so many systems in our body, And so this sympathetic nervous system is known best for its role in responding to dangerous or stressful situations. Just the dynamic creation of what we are is just purely amazing. That this body, without us thinking, is doing things to preserve itself. And I am curious, how is this wholly connected with the universal mind? And I'm hoping that this book may give us some answers. Before we get started, let's become familiar with this author, Julia Seton. Born in Decatur, Illinois, 1862 through 1950, she was an influential New Thought lecturer and founder of the Church and School of the New Civilization. It should also be mentioned that Julia Seton trained to be a medical doctor in Boston and returned to Colorado to practice medicine. The influence of that education will be very much noted in this particular book. Her influences in the New Thought movement came from the esoteric and metaphysical point of view. She also had considerable influence over Ernest Holmes, who was founder of the religious science movement. She was also a very key person in bringing awareness to the science of numerology, even though, yes, Pythagoras was its founder. Julia Seton brought a lot of the ancient wisdom into practical use. A lot of the philosophy and secret doctrines of Egypt, India, and Greece were also well known to her. And this we will see as she weaves it into many of her books. The Psychology of the Solar Plexus and Subconscious Mind was published in 1914 by Edward J. Cloud. We will move in now to Chapter 1, The Psychology of the Solar Plexus. There are many ways in which the human mind seeks knowledge, but no matter what pathway it chooses, it comes in the end to the finished product of its search, the unfoldment of a perfected, harmonious selfhood. There are many people who seek unfoldment along the lines of scientific research, and many who seek it along the lines of philosophy. And then again, there are those to whom all life is simply a system of religion and worship. These lines of research all add their might to the sum total of wisdom, but often, after these things have been fully exhausted, we find that there are many things latent within the consciousness which have not yet been answered. We are unsatisfied and do what we will. The mind remains disquieted and incomplete in its connections until it is linked with the unfathomed laws of the psychology within itself. Science from the plane of science is wonderful and fascinates us with its far-reaching laws of material relationships. Philosophy from the level of philosophy is fascinating also, and leads us through a labyrinth of conclusions and deductions, more or less purposeful. But after a while, all these conclusions connect us with other lines of consciousness, which they reveal but do not interpret. And we find that after the last words of science, philosophy, and religion have been said, there still appear levels of mental and spiritual expression which have not been revealed. Looking at life then, from the inclusion of a larger spiritual perception, we find that in order to build sublime and lasting interpretations which will stand the test of time, the human mind is called upon to interpret life not alone as a science, philosophy, or even a religion, but in all these ways linked together psychologically, giving the race the example of life as an art. We cannot know life as an art until we know and include in our conclusions the action of every phase of human consciousness, both seen and unseen, and then, through higher scientific and philosophical training based upon finer psychiatry, the race can come into larger methods for human progress, and through these methods eradicate sin, sickness, poverty, and lack of every nature. In order to know these finer laws of relationship, we must understand not only our being, but the laws of the universe in which we live. The energy which operates the physical human form is derived from and is a part of the infinite source. It is eternally existent as universal intelligence. This intelligence creates and manifests form in the world in just the degrees of harmony and power that the human instrument is attuned to transmit creative spiritual impulses. Unless all the states of consciousness and their corresponding cell centers are co-related in perfect atonement, the thing called life must take on a perverted form. Chapter 2. Centers of Being. There are two distinct centers of higher action within the human body. One is related to the external world and its laws, and with its handmaiden, is responsible for all physical manifestation, and one which is in union with all the unseen metaphysical forces of the universe and relates our human life with the wisdom of the ages past and to come. One stands for the manifestation of life revealed, and one is the agent of life concealed. It is only as we teach ourselves through training or through normal development to become master of these two positive centers and secure their continuous cooperation that we become lords of our own condition and set ourselves free from the recognized laws of sin, sickness, pain, and death, and bring our life into its normal expression of peace, power, and divine realization. The first center, and the one which has to do with the revealed life of men, is the cerebrospinal brain and its system of nerves. The physical brain contained in the cranium of the physical body is our great personal lawgiver and takes its place in the world of investigation, science, and intellectual expression of facts. Its sole function is to produce thoughts and to relate us normally to the changing conditions of the everyday life. It is necessary in order to get our true position toward our subject. We remember that the physical brain is divided into two great divisions, viz., the right and the left lobe. In the left lobe are situated many of the higher concept centers. Scientific investigation has not yet determined all the mysteries of this labyrinth of physical expression. Strive as we will to push psychiatry to a finish, neurologists and psychiatrists are continually confronted by new discoveries. Contention is ever rife among them as to actual function and location of vital centers of the human brain. But they are more and more agreed that the left brain is the controlling power of all the higher human expression, such as memory, imagination, speech, control, and expression. A tumor in the left prefrontal lobe has been known to produce certain symptoms from which scientists have been able to deduce important clinical precepts. Tumors in the right lobe of the brain have settled beyond a doubt the fact that the right lobe centers are of a lower order or function, and the right brain is practically only the handmaiden to the other half of the cerebrum. It is upon this fact that those interested in psychology and metaphysical healing hang their investigation and their faith. The left brain, in its function, seems to be busy with the higher ideations, while the right lobe is more closely related to the physical body and has more to do with the equalization or cell polarization. It is a sort of watchman to the physical body. It can readily be seen, this being true, whenever the body becomes diseased and in a disordered condition, the right lobe is not performing some of its functions, and the higher centers must be called into play to assist the body back into the higher expression. The higher centers are called to the rescue, and they pour through the right brain, and from this to the physical body impulses which make for health and strength. When the brain, through lack of training and lack of power of concentration, loses its power of inhibiting conflicting thoughts and becomes diverse and registers thousands of different ideations, we become incapable of making consciously toward a perfected impulse. Our physical body begins to express depolarization. The other vital point which makes for wholeness in union with our higher centers of the physical brain is the solar plexus, or the abdominal brain of the physical body, the great storehouse of universal energy and wisdom. The solar plexus is a large collection of nerve cells, and it forms the great center of nerve, generating energy for the sympathetic nervous system. It is whitish gray in coloring, very much fenestrated, quite flattened, and is attached to the second and third sacral nerves. It is situated above the middle of the upper border of the pancreas at the right and left of the coeliac axis, just opposite the margin of the diaphragm. The sympathetic nerves of the chest and abdomen are fully formed in a fetus, while the brain is only a pulpy mass. This could hardly be an accident on the part of nature. The early formation of this system proves beyond a doubt the priority of its functions. The body is nourished and viscera perfected, the bony structure finished without a brain or spinal cord. Children have been born without the presence of a physical brain, the sympathetic carrying on all the work of nourishing and sustaining the body. The absence of the cerebrospinal nerves and brain prevents a normal expression in those cases, for without them there is no way of registering any expression in the external world. The solar plexus is the home of the ego or the spirit of men. It is the connecting link between man and the infinite, and is the meeting place of the divinely physical and the physically divine man. From the solar plexus, we receive our visions called faith, and when we register them in the field of consciousness of our physical brain and work them out through scientific human reasoning into tangible expression, then they become facts. Chapter 3. Conscious union of the centers of being. It is not enough that we know the function of the cerebrospinal center and the solar plexus brain. We must know how to connect and master them. We do this by the power of conscious willing. We know the truth, and the truth sets us free. Union and conscious relation of these centers of being within us give us health, strength, beauty, and youth on the physical plane, and open the door for divine revelation to the soul. The prophets and mystics of old sang ever of their solar center of divine influx. The Hebrews ascribed to the rains knowledge, joy, pain, and pleasure. It is written, God upbraids the Jews for having him in their mouths, but not in their reins. The psalmists say, his reins instructed him, for righteous God trieth the heart and the reins. My reins instruct me in the night seasons, thus giving the clue to all visions and prophecies, and we know clearly what these men of old vaguely hinted, for the reins are simply the solar plexus center of the body. We are all familiar with the umbilical cord of the newborn child. It is the cord between the child and its supply while in its unfoldment stages. This cord on the external plane stands simply as a symbol of the other subjective cord, as above, so below. Those who can see the finer etheric bodies can easily see an etheric cord passing from each individual, connecting him with the finer currents of the universe. It is always present while one is alive on this plane, and as long as it is not disassociated, resuscitation of those who appear to be dead can take place. Over this cord there is continually passing in and out through the reins or solar plexus the impulses we call life. All sight, hearing, feeling, and emotion, all subjective sensations are the product of the activity of these currents acting upon the solar plexus brain and nerves, and through these upon the physical brain and nerves. There is but one sense, but this is differentiated by the physical centers into touch, sight, seeing, taste, and smell. Sound comes to us through the solar center, and the nervous system registers it in the localized hearing centers. There are individuals so developed that they can hear with other parts of their body as well as with their ears. The ears, with their fine nervous arrangement, are used simply to correlate sound and prevent the expansion of tone. Sight is the same. When one is sufficiently alive in this solar center, he has clairvoyance and cosmovoyance. He can see through space. People have been known to tell what was going on in different cities, seeing as plainly as if they were there. The optic centers are only fine arrangements of nerves by which one may correlate and localize his vision for physical objective use. And when he knows the finer relationship of self, he projects and expands his vision or lessens it at will. What the race calls the love energy is localized in the solar plexus. Any disappointment in love reacts upon the body through the exaggerated functions of the solar plexus center and the sympathetic nervous system. One has only to recall the quick declines following a great disappointment. Heart disease and quick consumption are well-known expressions. All the sympathetic centers are so closely and carefully attuned that heart disease, heart failure, angina pectoris, and all subjective heart symptoms are the product of abnormal solar functioning. And through the cardiac centers, the heart responds, and mind and emotions of the individual setting upon the abnormal vibratory law. It is well known by all mystics that kidney troubles of all kinds are the physical response to abnormal sensory stimulus or expression, such as excess in sympathy, love, passion, drink, or repression. Often it is the result of carrying a secret for years. Physical repression of all kinds brings about abnormal renal functioning. And this is not hard to explain when one remembers that the suprarenal capsules of the kidneys are supplied in a wonderful way by the sympathetic nerves. The scientists themselves say the branches of these plexuses are remarkable for their large size in comparison with the organ they supply. Neurasthenia, the great American disorder, is simply the overactivity of the cerebrospinal system of nerves and physical brain centers. Psychasthenia is the result of hyperactivity of the solar plexus brain brought about by loss of control of the thought centers of the physical brain, allowing feeling to overexcite the solar plexus brain, and through congestion of this center, flood the system with an excess of electroradiant energy, which cannot be taken care of by the physical cell centers. Both of these diseases will be cured when doctors and patients learn the true relationships of the centers of mind and body, and establish true physical and psychical relationship through thought and breath, not allowing the system to be driven on by a wild explosion of electrical force. Constipation is another American disease, and its cause and cure are in the solar center. There is no longer any excuse to continue with this limitation if we will follow the law of our own being and vitalize and electrify our body. In the normal individual, the solar center is receiving a continuous influx of energy, coming to it from without, passing in through the solar cord as the receptive or negative breath, and through the lungs as the creative positive breath. This energy passes into the solar plexus through the etheric waves coming from the sun, then from it over the nerves of the solar ganglion to the external nervous system of the spinal cord, then to the pineal gland, then to the brain. The pineal gland is the central point in the human brain where this energy is localized or controlled and sent out as needed at the call of the physical cells. It is always passing out in quantity sufficient to energize, vitalize, and etherize the flesh when the relationship is normal. But when it is broken, through diseases of the mind and lack of correlation of the centers of being, the control is lost. The regulating power ceases, and a vicious cycle takes the place. A diseased nervous system is the result. The pineal gland is the reservoir which stores up vital energy for physical supply. Each cell in the body has its own normal amount stored within it, so that the exhaust and supply is equal in a perfect body. The solar center is controlled, excited, or quieted through the natural law of breath, through the lungs, and through thought control of the mind. We must breathe correctly before we can polarize these physical centers continuously. The great muscle of respiration is the diaphragm, and in the descent and release of the diaphragm, there is brought about a control over the circulation of the solar plexus brain. An increased determination of blood to any center excites its function, just as a decrease lessens it, so that with complete breath control, the circulation of the solar plexus brain is a thing of our own making, and we increase it or decrease it at will. In many cases of pulmonary hemorrhage, this natural law of the control of all sympathetic functioning through compression of the solar center brought about through forced descent of the diaphragm has stopped hemorrhages which were before uncontrollable. Deep, slow breaths relieve internal congestion and draw the blood from the superficial vessels and through the thoracic portion of the sympathetic cord. Control of the pulmonary vessels is brought about. Slow deep breaths change our vibrations. by increasing the molecular activity of our physical cells. In many people, the solar plexus is inert, pale, bloodless, and not capable of attracting through itself the required amount of vibratory ether. When through breath we massage the solar plexus, we increase the determination of blood to that center, and with this increased molecular activity, there begins to be a greater influx of energy, and the whole body soon begins to respond with a new life. With this influx of energy, the cells of the physical body again release the latent force within them, and as this is passed out in radiation from the physical cells of the body, which in turn demand a new supply, the pineal gland is again excited into its normal action of supplying the demand. The centers in the physical body and brain become normal in their functioning, and the correct internal and external cycle of psychophysical activity has been restored, and the individual is in health. The great creative energy of the universe is always flowing through us, just as the current runs along the line, and this passing in of the finer etheric currents to be used in the construction, rebuilding, and vitalizing of the body and mind, and the passing out again from the physical body in lines of electrical force, is what constitutes the human aura. And those who are actively alive in their radiation are called magnetic and attractive. When one is in disease, the aura is correspondingly lacking in magnetic or attractive power. The great secret of human life is to have a magnetic selfhood and to hold consciously the correct relationship between these two centers of being. It is not enough to come into life and pass along, taking ourselves a confused bundle of states. To be Lord of our own kingdom, man must master himself, and only through understanding can we pass in conscious dominion. From the subjective solar side of consciousness, we receive all the God-born impulses which manifest as human aspiration and revelation. And through the external brain consciousness, we can give out the God-like expression of a divinely illumined mind. The great wisdom of the centuries is registered in the cosmic mind, and it is always beating upon us through our solar center. We are children of the sun, and in its converged rays, we walk and live and have being. With a carefully attuned human mind, thinking in unison with the finer rays of the universal mind, our common consciousness becomes the great wireless station with which we can register the cosmic messages, and through this bring illumination to our daily life and health to our physical forms, until at last we vibrate to a universal intelligence so high that, by the natural law of atomic attraction, we build a physical body of substance so vibrant that it becomes indestructible, and we are out into a new human experience made possible by our deeper understanding. When we know the true psychology of self, we join all the diverse currents of the human brain and its idea centers with the unified current of power that comes to us from within the solar centers. And the physical and metaphysical are one. We pass from the part of the law of life into the whole. We are lords of the physical, lords of the mental, lords of the spiritual, and lords indeed of all this lower kingdom. And our human life is linked with its source. Chapter 4. The Subconscious Mind. There have been so many things written about the subconscious mind, its use and power, that the student must wander in a maze of uncertainty and confusion unless he can be turned back into the straight path of research. It is time for higher revelation on this subject, and today there are those who know more clearly the great truths which the earlier psychologists only dimly foreshadowed. It is the task of the 20th century mystics to offer a clearer interpretation than has hitherto been given. The first psychologist taught that man possessed an objective side of consciousness and held the subjective side to be endowed with greater power than the objective. But they threw little light on what these two states of consciousness meant. From these earlier teachings, there has evolved the practice in the new thought world of hobnobbing with one's own subjective mind rather than getting into union with the one mind. We were told that suggestion to our sub-self or subconscious mind would bring about within us certain well-defined experiences. So while the old thought world prayed to its Jesus, the new thought world suggested to its subconsciousness. It is plain to those seeking to scientifically understand life's finer forces that there are some very finely marked laws in operation, and we cannot go very far in investigation until we find there are many states of consciousness within us with which the ordinary individual is entirely unfamiliar, and following this clue, we come face to face with the fundamentals of universal mind. The psychologists of today see only one substance and find this substance is formed from minute atoms, each atom possessing its own intelligence or atomic mind. Man is the highest point of localized atoms, and he and his environment become a well-marked center of activity within the larger universal world mind. Man's physical body is only a combination of atoms attuned to move at its own vibratory rate. The outer substance is simply a shell composed of separate points of intelligence. Mind is always clothed in body, and the central undifferentiated atomic stream of intelligence within us is called our spirit. While the outer crust of this differentiated substance are called body, but they are all really one substance. There must always be the outside and inside action of every law. So there is no such thing as a body and a spirit. There is only the outside and inside action of universal mind. Our physical cell body is a crust of atomic intelligence and is endowed with a brain, nerve centers, and system of nerves through which the spirit or higher intelligence can play, and within this physical body is another body of much finer substance because it is much more vibrant. And within this finer body or second is a third body of still finer substance, and so on, each body in turn holding another body, reaching the seventh dimension. There are three bodies with which individuals in the ordinary consciousness become familiar. The others belong to the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensions of consciousness, and only a few on this planet are awake in these states of vibration. Each body is endowed with its centers of expression, and these centers correlate with the brain and nervous centers of the physical body. And when the physical body is polarized and functioning normally, it receives, sends out, is vitalized and sustained by the energy of the finer etheric intelligence of its inner bodies. Combined with the cell intelligence, these bodies are linked into one by the central intelligence within them, or the one mind. Each body is distinct in itself, yet no one can say, here one begins or here one ends, for they interpenetrate as water does among the grains of sand. The atoms of each body are held in suspension within the fluidic substance of the other bodies. These bodies can be separated and passed out at will by those who know the law, and each one is powerful on the plane with which it has correspondence. And when we know how to manipulate the physical body and its cell consciousness through the consciousness of the other bodies, we produce within the physical body a law of life, of which those who are working only with the intelligence of the physical consciousness know nothing. These bodies are held together, centralized into one point in the solar plexus of the physical side. What the older psychologists fondly call the subconscious mind is nothing but the inner second body and its accompanying state of consciousness. This body is called by those who name it the psychic self. When one can function in this part of his consciousness and has become acquainted with the self, he is more powerful in his physical body. Suggestions to the subconscious mind did this much good. They vitalized the activity of the psychic mind and body and rendered more possible its power to manifest through the physical self. For while suggesting, the student was, to a small degree, suspending operation of his lower state of consciousness or his physical objective mind, giving more positive expression to his finer forces. The psychic body manifests through the centers of the physical brain. The solar plexus, with the higher concept centers of the physical brain, acting as the switchboard where connection is made for consciousness, holds all force intact. All the diseases of the world, except accidental wounds, fractures, and septic infection, are simply the discordant association between the physical body, its centers, and the bodies within it. When this refraction takes place, the ego cannot register its finer intelligence, and the physical body becomes the plaything of its own cell intelligence, made more discordant by the spasmodic registrations of the higher mind. It is known only too well that back of all the well-known conditions such as nervous prostration, temporary insanity, nervous disorders such as psychasthenia, neurasthenia, neuralgia, heart troubles with mental symptoms, morbid forebodings, and despondency, mania, and goiter, there lurks the abnormal activity of the psychic body, separating the physical body from the natural influx of power. There are two avenues through which disassociation is brought about. One is through the objective mind by negative, destructive thinking, and the other through the emotions by giving away to negative, inharmonious feelings. Our thoughts are the things which vibrate our physical body, and our emotions are the things which vibrate our psychic bodies. And on the thought will depend the character of the emotion, and an over-intensified psychic feeling will depolarize our flesh. It can be seen that when the association between the psychic self and the physical self has been disturbed, suggestion of the conscious mind to the subconscious is really only a choosing of such a quality of thinking as will reestablish a natural vibratory law between the psychic and the physical centers. The link of harmony is conscious, constructive mental activity, which is bound to be followed by harmonious reaction. When we talk to our sub-self or sub-mind, we are only talking to our objective consciousness and getting our own physical cell intelligence ready to receive the psychic message. And when we can suspend the action of our own objective mind and send our thoughts and feelings straight into the idea centers of our sub or psychic self, we thus connect the two bodies, and the psychic mind sends the energy back again into our physical cells, and they respond accordingly. Suggestion to the submind is the simple act of suspending our common thinking altogether and giving the ego or spirit a chance to speak and to register through our solar plexus on our objective mind and physical body the higher vibratory power. Then when we turn back to common thinking, we find our human mind illumined with a glory not its own, and we come after a while to trust our human convictions to the uttermost. For with the touch of our finer states of consciousness, into which we can pass at will, we feel that our own consciousness becomes God enshrined. When we know our own physical self and master all its laws and live in our physical body as king, we feel that we are conquerors of the physical plane. But when we find our psychic self and master all its laws and correlate all its power and pour it through the physical body, adding to this our own natural physical and mental power, then we are greater still and ready to say, I know. When we can suspend or link these two states of consciousness at will, we can pass into the superconscious self and the higher dimensions still waiting for us, and feel the full relationship with our other selves, passing all our attenuated energy through the psychic and physical body, bringing all the energy of the inner selves to bear upon our physical environment. Then we are conscious of our power and can speak as one having authority. In making suggestions to what we called our subconscious mind, we were babes in wisdom, for then we were holding the thought all the time and trying to make the psychic self do what it already could not choose but do, if we only gave it the chance. In this new understanding, we simply let the thought hold us. We suspend our mixed inharmonious mental currents until they are vibrated into unity with the finer states of consciousness within the self. Then we are become not only the holder, but the thing held. With this knowledge, the student no longer spends time with a part of himself which is already finished, but he learns to normally relate himself, all his atomic consciousness, with his ego, or his own higher constructive mind. And through this ego and his physical solar center, he has a direct touch with the universal mind. And then intelligence pours through all the states of consciousness within him, and his life becomes marked with a newfound power. Is he sick and wants to be healed? He realizes that disease is nothing but inharmonious vibrations he is registering within his cell sense, and he stops his tense, common mind and finds another state of consciousness. No one can pass into his higher dimensions of being until he has learned concentration enough to stop thinking when he pleases and to think of what he pleases for any length of time. Does he want a new environment? He realizes again that his environment is made of the same thought substance as his body, and he has the same psychic force and intelligence within it, and that if he will stamp the atoms in space around him with the thought of harmony, sending out from his common thinking mind only vibrations of rhythm, then suspend his thinking and let the finer energy permeate and express through every physical atom, it will not be long until his body and environment will become clothed with atoms corresponding to the higher intelligence under which he is functioning and with which he has gotten up correspondence. Man is a complete being. He has evolved through all the kingdom for many, many ages. He has within him derivatives from every plane from which he has evolved. He has latent centers which relate him with those from which he must yet derive. One by one, as he passes through the different dimensions of being, the lower centers of activity atrophy within him from disuse, and one by one, as he approaches the latent dimension of consciousness which must become expressed, he becomes aware of the awakening of new and unknown powers. As man approaches the time for higher experiences in universal intelligence, he finds the psychic self feebly asserting its existence, and he has new and unrelated experiences in his solar plexus center. And from this faint knowledge, men in the past projected the first instruction for its unfoldment and called it subconscious mind. Man is a magnet, and he cannot escape feeling and knowing that he is played upon by all magnetic, etheric, radiant, and celestial currents of the universe, and that they flow through him like the current flows along the line, and he, by giving harmonious response to the play of forces upon him, is unfolded into deeper states of understanding. The subconscious mind and the play of suggestion helped many on their way to fuller harmony, but an understanding of the psychic self and its power will pass the race into a world of liberty so great that it can become unlimited in its everyday world. The common mind of man may here and now become illumined through conscious contact with the wider dimensions of consciousness within himself. When he passes into union with this law, he transcends the dimensions of the common and subconscious mind and swings out into an orbit of extended power, which is only bounded by his own realizations. Chapter 5. Directions for linking the objective mind and the solar center. The point of union between the physical body and the psychical body is the solar plexus. The switchboard where the connection is made are the idea centers of the objective mind. The first step in correlation is to control the idea centers. Get calm in thought. Our thoughts are the things with which we emit vibrations into our body, which produce harmonious or inharmonious emotions. As we think, so we feel. And if these thoughts are harmonious, we respond constructively. If they are inharmonious, then destructive changes begin within our body. Remember that, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Get a beautiful constructive thought vibration. Then begin the in-breathing of long, deep physical breaths, inhaling through the nostrils and exhaling through the mouth. During each breath, keep the thought of love, peace, health, joy, realization, and illumination. Anything you desire, but choosing always the thought which will awaken within your physical body the finest and highest impulses. With each breath, know that you are really drawing from an inexhaustible supply, the energy that will express for you in the things you desire. Feel that coming into your body. Through your solar center is the great ray of infinite creative energy, which you, in your higher understanding, are simply separating into form for your immediate needs. After a few moments spent in concentration, breathing, and meditation, draw a long, deep breath and exhale slowly. Repeat again and again until you can feel an increasing respiratory sense. Then, holding the breath without exhaling, forcibly raise and lower the diaphragmatic muscle. Repeat from 5 to 20 times, releasing the breath as soon as the exercise becomes effort and inhaling again. Remember, there must be a period in which one does not breathe at all. We simply let the great breath breathe through us. First, to think harmoniously and breathe consciously. Second, to breathe deeply, holding each breath as long as possible. Then, releasing and waiting as long as possible before again inhaling. Third, inhale, holding breath, and massaging solar center with diaphragm. Then, releasing and again taking up the ordinary breath. The massage of the solar plexus through this breath gives one increased circulation of blood to the solar center, and this increases its attracting power. With a full stream of psychical energy flowing in from without, a full stream of power is released by the cells of the solar plexus itself. This electro-radiant energy flows over the sympathetic nerves, and it's transmitted to the cerebrospinal nerves and centers, and a warm glow begins to pervade the physical flesh. The psychical body is then inhaling its normal ether, and the physical body is inhaling its own, and this causes scientific union between the two bodies. The physical body demands this re-intensification of psychical ether just as a flower demands rain currents, rain and dew, and the psychical body demands this influx of heavier energy just as the high current demands the wire to insulate, centralize, and bring forth its power. Let the flesh body become devitalized and the current ceases. Let the current become too intensified and it electrocutes the body, driving it on hour after hour in a wild explosion of psychical energy. The functions of the subconscious mind, psychical self, are memory, feeling, intuition, revelation, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and seership. All subjective states of mind belong to this body, and there must be kept perfect polarization between this and the physical body, or its functions become slow, dull, and finally cease or run wild, as in mania, insanity, etc., which leave the individual a devitalized plaything of his own subjective senses. The functions of the objective mind and body are attention, impressions, registration, expression, and control with harmonious expression of all subjective sensations. Separated from its normal electrical action through the influx of the finer psychical energy, the physical body becomes clogged, morbid in secretion and excretion, dull in receiving impressions, and utterly incapable of carrying out a psychical command. Stolid, stunned, fit brother for the ox. The conscious command of the psychical functions through concentration of the mind and usage of the solar plexus has been the method of the seer for all time. And the power to make the body obey thought and feeling is the possession of all normal minds. Understanding of these bodies and vital centers and the control of these centers is giving us an almost supernatural manifestation of power. These exercises should be done at least twice daily, each morning just after arising and each evening just before retiring. The reaction will be instantaneous. There will at once pass into the body an increase of finer electrical energy, and this energy manipulated, controlled, and distributed will pass the ordinary individual into the possessions of the Superman. The solar plexus is the center of man's universe, and through it he is one with all things. This is the single eye. Take heed, therefore, that thine eye be single, for if thine eye be single, thy whole body will be full of light. And this concludes the reading of the book titled The Psychology of the Solar Plexus by Julia Seton. All right, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment. And hit the bell if you'd like to get notified when I upload my next video.